Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a conversation with the finalists for the 2026 PGA Innovation Award. My name is Diana White, and I'm the Director of Programs and Events at the Producers Guild. This year marks the 7th year of the PGA Innovation Award, and we are thrilled to have some of the producers here with us today representing all 5 finalist productions. Before we dive in, a quick plug for our PGA members watching. We hope you will join us on January 31st, which is a Saturday, in Los Angeles for our annual Innovation Showcase. It will be an interactive opportunity to explore and engage with the finalists you'll be hearing more about today. I'm delighted to welcome this year's jury leads who will be moderating today's conversation. Please join me in welcoming them. Maureen Fan, who is co-founder and CEO of Baobab Studios. Joanna Popper, who is executive producer of Finding Pandora X, Brianna's Garden, and Master of Light. And Angela Russo-Otstot, who is chief creative officer of Agbo and film and television producer. Thank you all so much for being here. And with that, I will turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here today, and we're excited to be here honoring this great work. I'm Joanna Popper. I'm the co-chair of the PGA Innovation Jury. We're here today in a moment of extraordinary creative range where innovation opens new doors and demands intentional choices from producers. These finalists were chosen from an incredible jury, and each take a different lens on story and innovation. Each project stood out for originality, for excellence, and for meaningful impact on the audience experience. So we're so excited to dive into these projects and hear from the producers about the intention, the risks, and the craft that brought these works of art to life. So we'll do some Q&A at the end of the panel, so feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. So today we have with us Julina Tatlock from ASTEROID, O Bridges from Big Wave, No Room for Error, Victor Agulhon from D-Day, The Camera Soldier, Kiira Benz from Territory, and Joe Rosenthal from The Wizard of Oz at Sphere. So we're going to start with a question for each of you. So each project on the stage pushed storytelling into an unfamiliar territory. What was the core story problem that you were solving, and what made this innovative approach that you took the best road, or made a more traditional approach insufficient for telling a story? So let's start with Julina from ASTEROID.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much, by the way, for the honor of being here and for being nominated. We're super excited and grateful. For ASTEROID, it was Doug Lyman and I started 30 Ninjas to create stories using new technologies on new platforms. What we had never fully achieved before now, we feel, was giving the audiences the opportunity in VR to be inside a Doug Lyman film. So what that meant for us was twofold, actually. One was actually creating a 180 stereoscopic film that Doug is proud of and feels like a Doug Lyman film. And there were a lot of technical difficulties we had to surmount in order to do that, including creating a story reason for the technology for us to be able to do over 3/4 of the film in CG and use motion capture and facial performances for the actors, the brilliant actors. But the other thing that we really wanted to do was then allow you to enter that story and participate. And there's no way after a film is over for you to stay in that film. So what we wanted to do was really give you the opportunity when you're in headset to enter the story through the film and through Doug Lyman's story, and then continue that story with him when you speak with an AI generated character, and try to save that character who you think perished in the film. So the story actually continues seamlessly from the end of the film into full VR, where you then can interact and help save the character. So it was that essentially that if you're going to be home alone, if you're going to be home and watching, how can you still enter and be as immersive as going to a movie theater, but in headset at home?
Great. Thanks, Julina. Oh, Bridges, let's go over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean it was a difficult one for us. We were trying to capture these big waves, and the only way to really do it, because this big immersive venue, it's so big, we had to shoot this on a fisheye lens. And I felt like Cosm kind of gave us the scale to let the ocean feel physically overwhelming. When I first saw it, I was blown away, and I was just looking at their R&D facility in Utah, and the theater had not been built yet. It had Sphere. I mean, everything was like being talked about, but once I saw it, I was so captivated by what I was looking at. I just realized I was like, I want to bring people into this space and feel this like I do, or like when we're out in the ocean. And that's kind of exactly how it feels in real life. It's like you bring them in and you have that full immersive thing. So the technology wasn't really about the spectacle. It was about the honesty,
Mm,
um, and bringing that camera right up in there. And we just had to work with what we had.
very cool. Thank you. Victor, D-Day.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much to everyone at the PGA and the jury for for nominating us. We're thrilled. Um, Delay the Camera Soldier is a Vision Pro documentary, right? So it's an immersive experience that lives in a headset. Um, I think the starting point for us in the documentary was first the conversation we've had with Anthony Giacchino, who was a documentary director who's made countless documentaries on World War II. We've always been wanting to work on a World War II documentary. And one thing that we kept on coming back to was the idea of transforming, all these archival material and this archival footage that we all know into the here and the now. And because it's been 80 years that the World War II, is now over, there was for us like an importance about, making sure that people feel connected and understand what happened on those days, on the events. And so focusing on the D-Day events first really allowed us to sort of talk about what happened during the war. So what we did in this documentary was that we transformed the archive footage into really volumetric scenes in which you can theoretically walk. So you really feel like you're here and there when you're on the beach during the landings, and that's an extremely powerful sensation. And for us, it was the whole experience talks about the story of this soldier who filmed the actual landings, and we learned about history through the actual story of his daughter. So she learns more and more about it, and the more you learn, the more she learns about his story, the more you become immersed in the experience. So what's interesting is that we actually start with the 2D frame content. So it looks like you're actually watching TV, and progressively we turn it to a 3D cinema, and then it turned into immersive video, and then it expands. And so we love the idea of having a really growing immersion into the story for you to connect with something that happened so far back in the past. So in the end, for us, I think the most important was the concept of transforming time into a place, which only immersive and headsets can really allow you to do.
Great. Thank you, Victor. Okay. Kiira for territory.
Hi all, thank you so much for having us. Again, yes, like everyone else here, we're thrilled to be a part of this. So thank you. Territory had more of a design problem. Our co-creators on the piece Kinetic Light had developed a theatrical dance performance that they had toured, and they wanted to evolve it into this surreal experience that could go to domes and to virtual reality. So we started with VR first. And for context, Kinetic Light is a disabled arts and dance ensemble. And so half the piece is aerial choreography. It's literally happening in the air. And they had designed and pioneered this unique technology to actually fly their wheelchairs 20 feet in the air. So they're also playing multiple roles. And we had to figure out how to capture all of this and then how to design for it in post-production. We really wanted to have the viewer and the experience feel the sense of scale, and you just can't do that with 2D cinema. And I think that's probably true for all of our productions that are here. So there's this opportunity with virtual cinematography to bring you closer to them, where you wouldn't be able to do that in a theatrical production. And there's also this power of agency that I think this medium allows for in this immersive and emerging technology and storytelling, where we're enabling the audience at the top of the piece to make these selections, especially audiences that haven't necessarily had art designed for them. So whether these people might be blind or low vision or deaf of hard of hearing, there are opportunities for them to engage with the piece.
Thanks, Kiira. Thank you. All right, Jane from Wizard of Oz.
Hi, everybody. It's really a thrill to be here on behalf of all of my colleagues at Sphere and all of the other producers who worked on this. We thank you. And Joanna, I have to just tell you, Brianna's Garden is one of my favorite pieces that I talked about just recently.
Oh, that's so kind. I'll let Lady Phoenix know. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. How do you take a beloved movie that generationally it's known and take it and put it in, respect it completely and put it in one of the world's first experiential venues that is the size of 4 football fields? So that right there was a problem, taking this cinematic film and making it experiential at the scale of Sphere. It took us several years to do this. We worked with AI after we'd gotten the rights from Warner Brothers, and the goal was to constantly look at the original director's intent of the film. So when we had to use super resolution outpainting and performances within the context of AI, what would the field of view look like? What would you see if Dorothy is running down a road and you're used to seeing her only in a traditional aspect ratio? Now you're going to see Kansas. Now you're going to see the road. You're going to see where Marvel's Caravan is. You're going to see where the house is, in conjunction to where the farmhouse was. So it was issues like that, and then the resolution of what it took to look at something that was traditionally 4K, and now we're looking at it in 16K. The other issues we had too were sound. I mean, most people have only heard Somewhere Over the Rainbow in mono. Maybe you've heard it in stereo. With Sphere, we have this extraordinary spatialized sound system with 160,000 multi-directional speakers. So now you are also mixing in, with spatialized sound. It was really just it takes a village. In addition to doing some new things with AI, we were also working with over 2,000 artists that come from every VFX house you can imagine, and we felt we created something really, the Wizard of Oz that and loved while watching it on television. There was that Wizard of Oz, and now there's the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So as you can all see, each project is so unique, so distinct, both in terms of the story that we're told, the way that the innovation came to play, and the way that the audience experiences each story. So now we're going to dive in a little deeper to each project. We'll start with Asteroid. Julina. So Asteroid places a lot of agency in the audience. So as a producer, how did you decide where to invite participation, where to deliberately limit it, and how did you do that while protecting the emotional arc of the story?
Yeah, it's a really good point, since we were using so many different new technologies, essentially, and new ways of interacting. I mean, most key is a generative AI film character that you speak with, and then interacting with a character using your voice. So as a user interaction was its own giant challenge, both to teach and help the audience feel comfortable, but also to technically make sure that, and with all of the enormous amount of writing and programming that goes into natural language conversation and writing so that the AI always stays within character, sounds like the character, stays within the story, that sort of thing. Our biggest priority always was delivering the vision of Doug, both as a film, both in the film and then through the story experience. So as an immersive experience, starting that, Victor, you mentioned sort of easing the audience into the story. Um, Most people don't think of Doug Liman as anything, he definitely plunges you into the storytelling, but that in terms of the structure of the format, we tried to harness the technology in the format so that you could get comfortable first speaking with the AI character, then going into the 180 stereoscopic film, which then propels you into space, right? And that's when the action of the story starts. But all of Doug's stories they all immerse you, whether it's Matt Damon in Jason Bourne or in Instigators, both have car chases. You feel like you're in the car with him, with that character. Same with Tom Cruise, whether it's Tom, in the two movies that he's done with Tom. So, having you feel like you're in that rocket and with those characters, getting to know them, they're flawed, they make bad decisions, but it makes for a great ride, essentially. Then to be able to speak to them, that's what we really wanted you to be able to do, was to let go of and have them be inside the story enough to feel like DK, who's the character that you save, is still alive at the end of the film, and that you get to you get to rescue him. He's left on the asteroid. So in order to do that, the natural language conversation character really felt like the real character in the movie writing, so that we were writing this film and all of the backstory and all of the knowledge bank and what would happen in the rescue, so that that's the same character. There's a unification of creative and technology there. I think I've deviated a little bit from your question, but it was really the form was always serving the story, essentially.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Angela, you want to jump in?
Yes, I'm gonna go over to Bo for Big Wave, No Room for Error. Bo, earlier you talked about that feeling you had in Utah at the R&D facility when you saw it, and that feeling, that visceral experience is such a core component of the great work that you've done. And I'm wondering, Big Wave takes the audience inside a very extreme and dangerous physical experience, and it's one that most of us, certainly myself, will never experience in our own real lives. And so for that story to resonate successfully, what is it that you wanted us as the audience to feel inside? And then also, how did that creative goal shape the innovations that you implemented? And interestingly, sometimes to heighten and then sometimes to really ground and preserve authenticity.
Yeah, thanks. I think when I think of the word immersive, though, it definitely I think about water, right? And when I saw this big screen, all I could think about was diving under that wave or being in the water. You're fully immersed, and you've got this weight of the ocean, right? Like, and these waves are so big and so consequential, they're death-defying, and have to go out in the water and be in that moment, but also we had to figure out how to take the cameras out there with us in the water and shoot with the motion of the ocean. But then when we bring it back, we would see it, on the big screen, and we had, issues of like, you had the horizon line, and too much motion in that big of a screen could make one sick, right? So we had to figure out ways we couldn't really stabilize much because we didn't have much to work with, because we're already dealing with such a massive giant canvas. So we had like a lot of issues there trying to figure that out, but we kind of had to go with what made sense in terms of how close we could get to the wave without dying, and then how like if we brought it back too far, now all of a sudden we're too far away from the action. And it was a tricky scenario. I think once we figured out like the goal was that immersive embodiment, then and not so much the observation, then the innovation kind of stopped being optional, really. Um, I feel like we really just wanted to bring the audience closer to what it feels like every single time. And all I could think about was I want people that have never been in the ocean or never sat on a jet ski, never sat on the side of the boat to go out there and feel what it's like to rock in that ocean. So we rock a little bit and you rock a little bit in the theater, and then I have to figure out a way to take people into the water or into another place because it might be too much for them to sit and rock. So then I was like, all right, what else can I do? So I might take it to like a helicopter scene where we're flying over and then there we got a stabilized image and we're moving over the ocean. But then I drop down beyond the like right on the cusp of like the horizon line with the water moving, and you see the athletes kind of contemplating their next big move or what are they going to do. And then you would take them under the water inside the wave and you'd feel the motion of the ocean like moving over you. So it was definitely a challenging, like the entire thing was brutal, to tell you the truth, but in a fun way. Like I've never experienced anything like it. Loved everything about it. And I think that the power of the screen and this big venue came to life once we finished this piece.
Definitely did. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Maureen now.
Hi, Victor. I have a question for you. First of all, I think it's so cool that you did D-Day because it's a story that so many people know. So to actually, besides seeing it on a screen and learning about it in class, actually being able to feel part of it, that's amazing. I have a question about narrative and interactivity. So I'm guessing most people on this call are from the film, television side, but interactive narrative has to bring in interactivity and part of the game side. And sometimes they fight with each other, right? Because games are about making it fun, and narrative is like getting the story across. So you could go, I know when people are doing VR, sometimes you give them interactivity, they just think about what are my powers? And they're just trying to explore that rather than listen to the story. And so they might miss the story, but still love it because it's so fun. So my question to you is, how did you make sure that they worked well together, right? How did you make sure that interactivity enhances the experience and understanding of D-Day rather than distract from it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's always a sort of conflict between games and TV or film cinema. This experience is clearly a documentary and lives in the world of TV and cinema. That's always been the intention. And no one in the team here is actually a game designer. So everyone, the director is a documentary director, and so I think that's where we come from. And so that's what we wanted to show to people. And so very clearly, it was very intentional for us in terms, even in design, just to make sure that it reminds people of streaming services, of going to the cinema, of actually playing back, a video experience. And so for us, that was like the grounding principle was it has to feel like a TV, like a film. Um, and then the second question, which is how do we actually integrate interactions in this, was first guided by a principle, which is that your attention is always more important than your actions. That at no point you should feel like you're stuck, that you're gonna have a sense of winning or losing, because it's above all, it's about the story that we're telling and not about winning or losing, because there's nothing to lose or to win. So I think just to give a concrete examples of how we implemented interactions to actually enhance the story and not take anything away from it. The vision of the director at the beginning was to make the D-Day landings feel like something that's part of our legacy, that we still live in a world that's been shaped by D-Day. And so at the very beginning of the documentary, we actually mapped the user's room. So we use the scanners that are on the Vision Pro to map the user's room, and we overlay photos and films of the D-Day landings all around you. So it feels like your surroundings, as if you could see through the walls, as if the D-Day photos and archive was still living around you. So it's something that's very custom, that feels very, personal, because it's in your surroundings. And that comes to highlight, a message that the director wanted to convey in this documentary. Then, because this documentary, the story of this experience is about, the daughter immersions into her father's story, we wanted to sort of like put you in her shoes. So to give you a very concrete example, at some point she goes into her basement, she goes and she opens a box of objects, and you have all the artifacts that her father brought back from the war. So there's a helmet, there's food ration, there's all these artifacts that her father used to own, and you see her picking them up and inspecting them. at this moment in the documentary, you fade to black and you appear in front of the exact same scene in 3D, but then it's your turn to actually pick up the objects. And naturally, because you've seen her do it before, it's your turn to do it. And so it almost feels like, you're being invited to do it very naturally. There is something for us in interaction that has to be natural. It has to, you have to feel like you're invited to do it. We don't have to, put a sign that tells you what you should do. Like, it has to feel natural. And an important element is none of it is conditional. So even if you don't interact, you won't miss anything because there was still the narration moving forward, and you still have editing that's being done, in the meantime. So it's really it's a sliding scale, and everyone will have different preferences for how interactive experiences should be. But for us, it's really about does it put more focus on your actions or on your attention? And if the second one is on the action, then we'll make a change. But it's very much a process in which you have to build, to try to see people's responses. And so we've done a lot of testing to make sure that every time the focus was actually remaining the right one, and that everything we would implement would serve the story in the way we wanted to.
That's awesome. I love how you brought in audiences to make sure to test it out and see how, which is, I know you do focus groups for movies and whatnot, but it's a little different watching the interactivity. So love that. Okay, my next question is for Kiira. I love this experience because you are inside a work of art in a performance, and it really experiments with form and audience participation. So I want to understand what you wanted because you're inside art. What did you want people to feel while they're going through this? What message did you want them to get when the ultimate feeling you wanted them to have? And then how did the medium help you achieve that? And where did it fight you? And how did you overcome that?
Question, Maureen. Thank you so much. Territory is so much about tension. And Kinetic Light had done research for years about barbed wire, and they spoke about barbed wire as a technology. And it's true. Barbed wire is a technology. It's been used to separate us. And so when we were looking at the hundreds of types of barbed wire and realizing that they're named after locations like Elwood and Cleveland, and Alice Shepard, my co-director on the piece, had told me the story about how she encountered this sculpture that was made out of barbed wire at a museum. And she rolled her body around the sculpture. She had this encounter, this dialogue with it. It was physical for her. And I think she wanted to dance with it and then create this aerial choreography and the technology to fly literally on wires. So it's funny as we were, creating this piece and working through post-production, and Wicked has come out. Every time I think about defying gravity, I'm like, this team is doing that, and they're enabling us to fly with them in this piece. So every shot in production, I just remember when the artist would go up in the air, I just be like, please come down back to earth safely so we can move this piece forward. And spending time with barbed wire was really interesting. There was this special prop barbed wire that was created so the dancers could perform with it without injuring themselves. Our 3D artist, Rhea Goldson, really studied it with intentionality. Our sound designer, Dragan Bosniak, we listened to it in the studio. There's a character named the Herald who whips with the barbed wire in this rope. And, we spent time sort of listening to how it cracks against the ground versus how it sounds when it's in flight. It's really layered into the sound design, and it's such a big theme in the piece. And I think it creates a separation between you and the characters at times, but also, you really feel it in the piece. And in virtual reality and in this immersive art form, anything is possible. We could bring you closer to that action.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kiira. All right, Jane, I'm going to come back to you. You spoke earlier about, how The Wizard of Oz is this iconic and really nostalgic film and has been for generations and has largely been experienced almost exclusively in home by those generations. And so the opportunity to bring it to the big screen was an incredible one. And not only did you bring it to the big screen, you brought it to the biggest screen that is a curved screen and requires a massive overhaul to technologically make that work. And I loved earlier when you were talking about the North Star for that creative decision-making process and where to make those adjustments and always honoring the original intention of the director. I've taken my parents and my children to see it together. So it was really interesting to watch how each of those generations who have connected to it over the years took in this new experience, the film that they know and love, but also the new aspects of experience that it provided for them. So I'm curious, since you have launched at the Sphere, what is it that you and your team have learned from the audience that has come to see it?
That they're in the film. I think that the difference of sitting back in your living room and watching the a small screen, or as large as your screen is, it's still not as big as the Sphere screen. And to watch it experience it together, and especially with all the 4D effects that we were able to bring to this. So we were able to transport the audience as to you were in Munchkin Land. You went down the yellow brick road. You experienced what happened when flying monkeys were over your head with drones. You were in the tornado when Dorothy is having her dream. You visit the wizard. You actually feel like you're there with the fire. So there were all these 4D effects that we really had a great time working on. And as well as our flying apples that people love. But we were able to give them that experience of being in the film. It's the experiential nature of this new medium at Sphere that you're there. You're with Dorothy. You feel the emotions of all the characters. So, I mean, that's what I feel that we get from the audience. As a filmmaker and a producer, we learned an awful lot about what the intent of the original filmmakers were as we were expanding the frame. Ben Grossman and his team from Magnum Opus were doing these archaeological digs. So we knew what the props were that were in the Gale House. We knew the props that were in the witch's castle. We knew what the intent of the original set designer was. We knew we had a lens package, not from Wizard of Oz, but from Gone with the Wind, which was made the same year. And we knew what they were trying to achieve. So we were trying to bring their vision to life even more. And I think that becomes a new way of looking at Wizard of Oz, no matter how many times you may have seen it with as a child, or with your children, or with your parents. Again, as you said, it's kind of a multi-generational experience.
It's amazing. Thank you. Let's see. Maureen, do you want to hop in now? And maybe we're going to ask some shared questions for all.
Just to remind people also, we do have a Q&A function. So if you have a question for the group, feel free to drop in the chat.
Cool. Okay. I have a question for whoever wants to answer this question. It's about producer judgment, right? So what storytelling risk worried you the most while making this? Like, what was the hard thing? And how did you decide it was worth taking?
Should I
Yeah, Kay, go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, you're starting with a beloved movie, and that was shot in a 4x3 letterbox format, and expanding it to 160,000 square foot display. When we started working on it, we weren't even sure it was possible. We were looking at what happens if we did it with CGI, which would have created some real problems in terms of what the characters would have looked like. It would have been photorealistic, kind of an animated version of it, and that would violate the integrity of it. Now we started to look at AI. Okay, AI is clearly controversial in our industry, yet Pandora's out of the box. How do we use it? And how can we use it in a way that it is, we worked with the IP owners, and we're again trying to just go back to the original intent of the film. So we were fine-tuning the AI models on the original source material, using the original films, going back to the archives, all this that I talked about before, and we could stay true to it as we were, looking at outpainting and super resolution. But it was a real challenge, and it was really, and you couldn't do this with AI alone. And you needed the human elements. You needed all of these artists, all of these VFX um, artists to work with us. And the technology's great, but it's the human connection too, the human artistry that brought this together and made it into something special. It already was special, but again, what is it in the sphere? It's something you've never seen before.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up on that too. So I felt like what we were doing was we were dealing with something that was visually powerful with these massive waves, anything from 10 feet to 60 feet. And we shot in Tahiti and Jaws and Maui and Nazaré and Portugal. And it's always tempting to exaggerate those wave heights, but the scale, the motion, the danger of all that, we actually use innovation to avoid it, to avoid like exaggerating anything, because what you shot is what you got. And the accurate like spatial scale that we were dealing with, the natural timing, the real world camera limitations, um, that protected the truth of the experience. The waves feel massive because they are massive, they are powerful, and that's not because we enhanced them. I mean, I love the idea of using AI in our movie. I wanted to, but we didn't use anything except we painted in some of the areas here and there that we needed to. But I think instead of like by removing that artifice, instead of adding it, we trusted the audience to feel the danger on their own. And that trust is kind of where the authenticity lives in Big Wave.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I'll say it's a very, very different film and also experience than obviously what Jane and the team did with the Sphere, but using AI live. So it's a live character generated. It is not controlling every single word that comes out of the character's mouth, right? So there was a faith that we would be able to deliver the writing to the model and create a character that would stay within the rules and the guidelines and work with the programmers where the words when you're working with generative AI, it's the words, the prompting become part of the code, and the code helps to use and direct and give power or take away power from the words of the prompt and the knowledge bank. But that was, I think, the biggest leap of faith that we made, and that certainly that Doug made, because Doug is really, as a director, a lot of his films feel as if they might be improvised or improvisational because they feel so spontaneous. The characters make, how the characters are written and how the filmmaking, how fast-paced the filmmaking is. But he's very, very careful about the rules of the world and the story and what fits and what doesn't fit. And so that was, I think, the biggest opportunity. And the reason we did it was that pre-written lines, when you're talking to an NPC, that just feels exactly like, that just doesn't feel spontaneous because it's not responding to you. So this was an opportunity to both create the rules of the world and have it follow the rules of the world. One of those rules being there's a spontaneity to it, and an immediacy to it that's actually happening. So it was both the opportunity and the challenge and the fear and the elation, I think, of the process.
Great. Thank you, Juliana. So for you, Victor and Kiira, Maureen was just asking about judgment as producers and the risks that you faced. And I'm wondering about some of the insights and the carry forward insights. What storytelling lessons did you learn from your projects that will change how you approach projects moving forward?
I can go first, Kiira. I think that there's two lessons here. When we started this project, the Vision Pro was just announced. So basically, we started the platform didn't really exist yet, but we felt that it was going to be the right platform because um, our feeling was that we didn't need immersion for the entire story, right? And I think it's the first time for in our production using VR headsets that we just were able to be very intentional about immersion and trying to think about when the moments of presence would be really required, when they will actually bring something to the story versus when you don't need them. And what we realized is that if you're being so intentional about this, then you sort of use these moments as highlights in your movies, in your films, and they serve the story much better. So now this ability we have to switch between looking at a 2D screen or even just a 3D screen in front of you, and then sometimes expanding that immersion into fully immersive moments, I think is something that we really discovered, midway through the production that was really enabled for us by the Apple Vision Pro as a platform that allowed us to have this fidelity and this just like this high quality experience. And it's just something that I think now has sort of become part of the DNA of the project that we want to do because we just realize that not everything needs to be immersive, and we finally have the ability to use more intent, really when shooting these moments of immersion for us.
I think it's really interesting in all of these productions how we're each using technologies that are evolving right now and how they can serve the project in their best ways. So obviously, AI is a tool. On this production, we couldn't use AI because I think, as we all know, a lot of AI data sets is not trained on the most diverse populations right now. So in terms of segmenting the performers from the green screen, and this, a tremendous part of this shoot is aerial choreography. It's like the whole movie feels like an action film flying in the air. So how do you do that? So it was actually a lot of manual work. So in some ways, where we think that we're in this golden age of technology, there's still limitations. And I think it's a really interesting time for us to be thinking about how we can actually, as storytellers and producers, continue to push these mediums and technologies forward. It's been fascinating. One of the things that our VFX supervisor suggested was that we actually do an old Hollywood technique, and that because we couldn't shoot volumetrically, which I've done a lot of work in, or 360, we actually shot 2D. And then we took all of the 2D video and we did an old Hollywood technique and we layered them like video cards in a foreground, midground, background. So it's kind of like layering, for anyone that's familiar with game engines, it's like layering hundreds of pieces of cellophane in the game engine. And it created the sense of depth. We also took the characters, we expanded them three-dimensionally and then relit them. So we're kind of pulling in new techniques and old techniques at the same time. I think it's such an interesting time to be telling stories. And then, of course, how do we design for accessibility in XR? And so that process began for our team at the very beginning. We were learning from Kinetic Light about this approach where we would have training for every department lead at every point about what accessibility meant. And in every production meeting, if we were designing and delivering for a specific element that week, we still talked about what the sound design and closed caption system would look like at every single juncture. So our team started to call it this kind of layer cake. And I think that's a really interesting approach for us to take moving forward into production and post-production, that we can begin to think about our audiences as wider and more diverse, and that there are more audience layers to be designing for. There are more limitations that we can actually exceed when we start to imagine beyond the box, just as we're all imagining beyond the two-dimensional flat screen. And we've recently co-authored a 100-page case study that we've distributed to over 16 institutions about this production approach. And I really hope that it continues to serve productions in the immersive medium and even other cinematic productions going forward.
Thanks, Kiira. Okay, now we're going to head to the Q&A. So if you have a question, please drop it in the chat. Our first question is from Guy Reed. He is the director of Orbital, which was last year's PGA Innovation winner. Congrats, Guy and the team. He is asking about how do you think about presence as a concept in immersive media? Who wants to take that one first?
I'll take that one.
Great. Julina, jump in.
Yeah. So I think that the concept of presence in terms of filmmaking was a really difficult one for filmmakers, for any type of traditional filmmaker, because you weren't controlling the frame exactly. So you didn't know exactly where people were going to look. However, I think that the feeling that you're being immersed in a story, or even when you're at a movie theater, that lean back experience that you are there, there's an immediacy to it, you feel present there inside the story. I think we were going for, but not in a more traditional fly on the wall 360 video presence and empathy. Um, uh, I think that there's a lot in terms of the headsets, also the technology itself, and that is allowing filmmakers to have more control of where you're looking and create that story environment that you're within, but still have control over the pace of the story and basic and how they want you to feel, how Doug would want you to feel and respond within the course of that. So you have agency of where to look, but more control of the filmmaker in order to help to define what the experience is and the pace of that.
With Sphere, Jim Dolan has built this extraordinary new technological venue, and it is experiential. And so every character, every way you are in those environments. You are part of it. You're present. Also, the way we could mix with spatialized sound that would again bring you into the haunted forest as you're walking, down before you get to a field of poppies. So it's just the fact that it is experiential and everything is in focus. It's different than us looking at something cinematically. I think you feel even more present.
One thing to add on this from the documentary perspective, because for us, I think presence is about just making you feel that you're not in a moment that's being staged and just about showing you the truth and the reality as it is. And like the authenticity of this medium is, like that's unmatched, and that's why you use the medium for. And I just love the word presence as a word, just for the fact that it's the here and the now. And that's, it's as basic as it gets, because it's what we've been saying, I guess, for the past 10 to 15 years in immersive media, but it still holds in everything we do. And so what I love about doing documentaries with this is the fact that you're entering into people's worlds, the fact that you're having conversation one-on-one, that if I'm filming an interview in 180 degrees, then you have the sensation that the people that are interviewed are actually speaking directly to you. The sensation of meeting people in immersive, to me, remains the pinnacle of what you're doing this, right? It's that one-on-one experience for me remains the core value that you can get, especially at least in documentaries, which is the concept behind what we're doing at Targo. So it's the key. I would say presence really is the key.
Yeah, I got one more thing to add to that too. I think the presence being too in this big immersive venue is that you have to let every single shot sit and resonate with the viewer for so long. Like we couldn't just cut to the music, cut to the beat, quickly change from this angle because now this angle works better. And we had to let everyone sit. It's like, where's Waldo, right? You had to like watch it 15 seconds every single shot, because there's so much for your brain and so much for your body to take in that you're looking all over the place. And even when I go back and watch the movie again, I see things that I've never seen before. even I was there shooting it. Like I saw in a wave, I saw a flying fish come flying out that I never even noticed in the first take, or even when we watched it in the movie theater the first time. Like it's just like it's so cool to be there and see all these little things. It's like you're there in the real world, and it's where does your eye want to go inside this space? Because that's what's so cool about this. It's like it's not just this little box where you're used to looking at your phone, everything else. Now you're looking at you're the visual like viewer, and you're just like, what part of this do I want to take in and view? So I think that's so much like there's so much adrenaline with these big waves, but the goal wasn't all about the adrenaline, it was about the presence of being there. And so kind of narrowing that reality down, where everything falls into that breath and that balance and that silence and everything else that was around was pretty neat.
Presence train, Guy, great question. I think presence really unlocks the gifts of this medium, and it enables this opportunity for embodiment in the medium. We're not just in the environment, we have this opportunity to connect with the characters, but to really feel it in our bodies. And I think that's part of presence. And for us in this piece, we were the first PCVR experience to work with a Medic haptic studio. So you're actually feeling the score in your hands. And I think when you think about the different ways that we feel things and we sense things, and for different types of audience members joining, the opportunity to really feel what that score is like. Each character has their own leitmotif coming in. I think the ability to design for that in this medium is just so exciting, and it does create presence and a deeper relationship to the story.
Thank you. Our next question is from David Fine, and a couple of you have answered it already, but if anyone else wants to jump in on this one, his question is about audio. He said, much of the innovations are visual, but audio makes the worlds come alive. What special considerations or enhancements do you employ to bring your audience into the experience instead of merely as an observer? What were your goals and challenges around audio?
Mixing in spatialized sound with 160,000 multi-directional speakers. It was a challenge, but it was actually exhilarating. So something as simple as, if you remember when the Tin Man says to Dorothy, "I don't have a heart," knock on, and so she knocks on the Tin Man's chest, and then all of a sudden you could feel the sound bouncing off all around you. I mean, just little things like that we could really have fun with. But it is a challenge to mix there because it was the only place we could mix, and our hours were really crazy because there were other things in the venue during normal hours. But
little things called concerts, right?
Yes, exactly. Concerts. So you had to work at graveyard shifts. That said, the sphere sound is extraordinary, even for the concerts. You feel the music, you feel it just come right through you. So it was really special, but it was also difficult.
I know we're running short on time. Just if anyone else wants to jump in on the audio.
Really fast. So something really unique about this production is that the Kinetic Light team brought to the table is this multi-track audio description. So I was familiar with, one audio description track running in a feature film. Not all feature films have them, but some designed for them. But we have 5. And you have the opportunity to choose which type of audio description track you want to enter. So you could go inside the characters and you could kind of hear these monologues from them internally, or you could choose to understand what's happening just with their movement and what's happening with the choreography, or you could listen to the environment and the lighting design. I think for a blind and low vision audience member joining in, there's a real level of immersion for them. We also had built the first artistic spatialized closed caption system. So we love spatialized audio in this medium. I think what they did at the Wizard of Oz is incredible. And then I think about what can we do if we also layer in spatialized closed captions into all of these experiences.
Great. Okay, we have a great comment that I'm loving in the Q&A. It's from Randall Kleiser, who's director of Grease. Grease was one of my first favorite movies, and he's saying, "How about doing Grease at the Sphere, Jane? I want to get in on producing on that one too, if you guys decide to do it." So, hopefully, you guys can connect offline. But I love that. And next year is Grease's 50th anniversary. So going around, let's go
hand dive. I said, hand dive.
All right. So for the last question, I'm sure everyone has learned so much from the panelists, and it's probably just now, if there's any of the projects they haven't seen, is dying to see it. So let's go around and share with everybody, how can they see the projects, and if they want to follow up with you about anything, what's the best way to do that? For those who are PGA members, I think most people on this call are PGA members, but for those who are, if you are in Los Angeles next week, January 31st, there will be a public viewing of many of the projects. It's at 1 to 4 p.m. LA time. If you are a PGA member, you should have gotten that in your inbox. And if you haven't, go look for it or let us know. So that's one way to hear more and see the projects. Let's go around, start with Julina. How can people see Asteroid? And what's the best way to follow up with you?
Best way to follow up with me, I'm at Julina at 30ninjas.com. So it's pretty straightforward. Email. Jed Weintraub, who's another partner, is Jed. Is Jed at 30ninjas.com as well. Asteroid is on the Samsung Galaxy headset, Galaxy XR headset, the Galaxy. I believe you can see demos of Asteroid at the Samsung stores. So you should be able to see that if you don't have a Galaxy XR headset. It's only available on the Galaxy XR. So please come if you're in Los Angeles. If you're in New York City and you want to see, our team is in New York City. Most of our team is, so that you can reach out to me if you wanted to come by the office and do it and see the project there as well.
Great. Thank you. All right. Bo.
Yes. So best way to contact me is bo@bobridges.com. Bobridges, or at bobridges on Instagram, and it's BO, the shorter version. And yeah, the movie's playing at Cosm in LA, next to SoFi Stadium, and they have one other venue in Dallas, Texas right now. But you got to check in. I know they got a play. They're showing it tomorrow, 11:30 a.m., which I'm going to try to go to. I'm going to be in town. And then the 23rd and the 30th, they might have some other specialty ones. We can check in with those guys. But it's cosm.com, and that's where you can see the movie there. It's about 55 minutes long.
Thanks, Bo.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Victor.
Yes, so the experience is available on the Apple Vision Pro. So if you own a Vision Pro, or if you know someone that owns a Vision Pro, or someone who knows someone, that's a way for you to watch the film. If you want to stay connected, just type my name, Victor Agulhon, somewhere on the internet. I check all the mailboxes, LinkedIn, Instagram. The company website has a contact also. So there's anywhere you'll be able to contact me. And I'll be in LA for the showcase day on the 31st.
Thanks, Victor. Kiira.
Story is currently touring with Kinetic Light, so you can find them at some universities. And also it will be on the MetaQuest store. And you can reach me on LinkedIn, Kiira Benz, or at doublei.co.
Thank you. And Jane.
Well, you can go to thesphere.com and get tickets. It's in Vegas, and I've learned to like Vegas. I can't believe I'm saying that, but there you go. There's good restaurants too, besides a great show, and I can be reached at Jane Rosenthal, sphere.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much. This was such a fantastic panel. We're so looking forward to the event, January 31st. Reminder for the PGA members, 1 to 4, you can come out on January 31st and meet the creators, meet the producers, see the projects. And thank you all for your extraordinary work. We're so thrilled to have this time with you. And thank you for your amazing work. And thank you for sharing your insights. And thank you to the PGA and to our co-jury chairs, Angela and Maureen, for doing this together. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much.